Plebes, thanks for joining us here. We've got a bit of a departure for you today. We have Jon Stokes joining us. And this episode, we're going to talk primarily about artificial intelligence and all of the different things that are going on in the machine learning world today. Most of you have probably been paying attention to it. It started with maybe Stable Diffusion in late last year, and now with ChatGPT, at least for the mainstream, it has gotten to a point where it's impossible to ignore the crazy movements that are happening in this. And so we thought we'd sit down with an expert and go through some of the basics and try to wrap our heads around how this is going to change things, what this means for the world. And man, it's a lot to drink in an hour, but we're going to do our best to get through it.
Yeah, it's a huge topic. It's worth our time. It's worth everyone's time. Josh and I have been talking a lot about this. I personally did some cursory and layman's investigation into the state of AI back in like 2017. But truthfully, I mostly shelved it, Josh, until utilizing ChatGPT. And like many, having this in front of my face just really reminded me how dramatically this will impact the world around us,
right?
Whether we like it or not, right? And it to me, it feels like, from my outside perspective, that we are entering a new key chapter in the digital age. For our Bitcoin audience, I think immediately, and I think most people do on the topic of AI, to Jeff Booth's book, The Price of Tomorrow. And in that book,
Deflation.
one of the key parts of that book is he talks about, if you fold a piece of paper on itself 40 times in half, it'll reach all the way to the sun. Essentially, by referencing these folds, he's just talking about the exponential nature of technological progress. And with each fold, it being a step change in the rate of progress, AI is clearly accelerating these folds. They're happening quicker. They're happening simultaneously. And I'm sure you agree, John, like the more I learn, the more I am around this technology, which you've done for your entire life, I'm recognizing it's going to completely alter the way we live, work, and interact with the world around us. So pumped for this hour. Appreciate your time. Josh and I are but young birds, baby birds, nestlings.
Goslings.
And yep, hopefully you can step in here today, chew up some of this food for us, and regurgitate it into our mouths in a way that we can digest, John.
Yeah, so welcome, Jon. Tell us a bit about yourself real quick.
What is it that you guys like? What's the kind of high level? Because AI is like a big topic.
Okay, I know it's incredibly hard to. So
you gotta
I think the most
me.
important thing for us to start with is maybe some kind of comparing this to a technology that exists already, right? Like, so let's talk like when electricity was introduced in the late 1800s, people were scared shitless of it because they didn't understand it. And what I'm finding is primarily from your Substack, you had a great piece that was about understanding how GPT works. And having read through that, before that, I was listening to Eliezer Yudkowsky, and I'm scared shitless because he says the world's going to end in 5 years. Now, when I listen to something like that, or any lay person listens to something like that, automatically alarm bells go off and you think, holy shit, this is scary. But after doing a little bit of cursory investigating, reading a lot of what you have to say, I'm a lot less apprehensive about it because I understand the basics about how this thing works. It's no longer magic to me, although most programming in this, that world is magic because I don't do it. But after just understanding a cursory idea about those language models and how they work, I think it's helpful for people to use that as a way to go, oh, okay, this isn't just scary magic. There's actually some logic behind this, clearly. Can you break that down for us? Explain how these large language models work in a way that a layperson can understand, so that this doesn't just look like there's a magic box and it's going to kill us all. So just give us the quick idea of like how they train these things, how humans are involved in training them, and then how that all turns into this magical GPT that can answer most of your questions.
So I guess, but to back up before I talk about how they do the models, the interesting thing in this like AI doom stuff and what you guys are talking about, listening to Yudkowsky, like kind of getting worried, then reading about how they work and feeling like, oh, I kind of have a grasp on how this functions. There's a missing piece here, which is we don't know how the brain works. Like, we don't know, like, no one knows how I'm producing language right now. Like, I'm just kind of doing it, right? And we have some models for how it works at a low level, like neurons And we have, I mean, it's not like it's not a complete and total black box, but at any level of abstraction that we care about is still pretty black boxy. So you have a model here that we do understand more of how it works, and we kind of have a lot of different explanations for it at levels of abstraction. And it does something like what the brain does. It's or not, or the output is similar to like the output of a human linguistically. So
Mhm.
this is the kind of thing that calls for some humility. It's like, okay, I know how the model works, and I don't know how the brain works. And so I know that the model does brain looking things, and I know that my brain does a whole lot of other things. At what point will the model start to do things that are more like my brain than just produce language or make pictures? You know, like it's already, we find that it can make plans when prompted. You can say, you know, plan a weekend getaway in the Hamptons, and the model will come up with like a pretty credible plan for this, you know, or you know, the viral one, plan a bank robbery. Now, you know, I don't know
Right.
much about bank robberies. I'm assuming that the model's plan for robbing a bank is not a high quality one, but nonetheless, you know, the model can make some plans. So we find that models can make language, they can make sentences, they can complete sentences, they can make drawings, they can make plans, they can make computer programs. So they can do many brain-like things. And so just to kind of steel man Yudkowsky a little bit, he's going, okay, these can do lots of brain-like things. What else is out there in the space of brain-like things that these can do? You know, how, to what degree does my brain work the way that we know that this thing works? Like to what degree have the invention of machine learning, has it been about discovering how our own minds work by like building these kind of toys? You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
then you're like, okay, well, what if out there in the space of probabilities is like a supervillain brain, you know, or something like this? And so that's kind of the, so while we do know, you know, while it is good to for people to chill out and to learn how these work and to maybe not get so scared, like it's still, to give credit to a little bit of credit to the doomers, it's still important to have some amount of humility no matter how much you know about how they work, because we just don't know how the minds that they imitate work, but we know that they imitate the minds pretty well. And so, you know, I entertain that maybe there's something very much like is going on inside a model that goes on inside my own head. So to speak to what's going on inside the model, when when you train a model, you are kind of this is hard to explain without certain concepts like probability density function and whatnot. But when you're training the model, if you can imagine that every song, every picture, every sequence of words that we could make up that could possibly be invented could be represented by a number. So imagine that we can, and this is actually true, right? So the words that I am telling you right now are turning into numbers, and they're going into the screen onto a computer hard drive. They're turning into binary code, correct? So you
Right.
guys get this
Mhm.
part, right? So we're talking over the screen. Riverside is taking this, turning it into binary ones and zeros and storing it. So it's turning it into numbers. And we could turn these into really large integers like 1, 2, 3, 4, a bazillion, quadrillion, whatever, right? So when we are done with this recording, this whole recording is a digital file, and that is one giant number. Okay, it's just a string of ones and zeros.
Yep.
Depending on how you interpret it, it's a giant number. So now let's imagine that all of the numbers, like if I make up if I come up with a new number, if I discover a number that's, if I count to a really high number that nobody has ever counted to before, did I discover that number or did I invent that number? That's a question for you guys. What would you say?
My gut would say discover.
Okay.
I think you could make the argument in either direction.
Okay, but what is your, so you could argue in either direction. One way of looking at it is the number was already out there in the field of numbers, and I
Yep.
just happened to iterate my way to it and discover it. Another is
Yeah.
that I made up that number Now, when the next person, let me ask you if you think that is possible that I made that number up. Let's say that I die, having never told anyone that number. And then my oldest kid, one day counts up to that number. Would you say that she invented that number, or would you say that she discovered it or rediscovered it?
Rediscover is how the way I'm thinking through it is discover and rediscover, because we know that it exists in the possible Rolodex of existing numbers.
Okay.
But then you could never know if somebody ever had discovered that in order to say it was rediscovered.
Well, I mean, we don't necessarily know who discovered America first yet, do we? I mean, you can see, but it was here. America was here. Like the Vikings didn't invent America. Like Columbus didn't invent America. It was here and he found it. So anyway, this would have been like a really kind of goofy and like fun, like late night dorm room BS session type of question, but AI makes it kind of important. So let's go with the discovery thing, right? So let's just say that all the numbers that could possibly exist to infinity, they exist in a meaningful way. It's something to say that the number 1 million exists. And that, if humanity were wiped out and, the cockroaches evolved intelligence and they counted to 1 million, they would have like rediscovered 1 million, right? They wouldn't have invented 1 million. They would have discovered 1 million. So, I mean, my dog, can count like a couple of, treats and stuff, it knows when it's short, a treat. If it expects 3, then it knows to count to 3, right? Is that dog inventing the number 3? This is hard to say. So now when you combine that fact with the fact that on the internet and on the computer, in the realm of computers, everything is a number. Every experience that you can have is a number. An entire movie, Saving Private Ryan, it can be saved to like a however many gigabyte digital file. That's one number. Saving Private Ryan is a number. And if you can find that number in the space of all numbers, the number that is Saving Private Ryan, then you can watch that movie. Presuming you know how to turn that number into a video. Does that make sense? Gotcha. So I mean, this is getting weird, but this is the way AI works. Okay. So what AI is going to do?
Just to
Sure. Go ahead.
I was just going to. So I get you're establishing that all of this is a space of numbers, and so these giant model data sets are basically adding or giving these numbers different probabilities to be found for certain inputs. Is that in the realm? That's
exactly right. You got it.
Correct.
Yeah, you got it. So only some numbers are interesting. So the number that is the video file of Saving Private Ryan. Well, there's a couple of numbers. There's the 4K number for it, and then there's the 720p number, and then there's this edit and that edit, right? So out of say 20 different numbers in the world that are versions of Saving Private Ryan, if you're off by 1, then you probably have a bunch of noise in that file and not Saving Private Ryan. If you're off by like an integer whole number, if you're off by 10, maybe if you're off by like a 1 bit, it's fine. But there's a certain threshold beyond which, if you're off, like then the movie doesn't look right, or it's not a movie, it's junk. Okay,
that's kind of interesting. So you're saying that if you're off slightly, you could still actually see something that resembles or is close. It's not almost like deterministic where it has to be exact.
Yeah, you might, depending on if the file format. This is about how you're interpreting numbers. And so JPEGs and different kinds of images are what we call lossy. And so you can lose some information and it still can look okay. Then, and now in the world of AI, if you had most of the file of Saving Private Ryan and you were off by like a significant degree with your number, you had the wrong number, but it was really close, you could actually use AI to fill in some of the missing frames and parts and get pretty much close back to the number, right? So AI then, so in the infinite universe of numbers that we could just say pre-exist, let's pretend that they all exist out there. Only certain ones are interesting. They're interesting when we feed them into a computer and they turn into files, because we have codecs for this and stuff like this. So we are training the AI to, when we put a prompt in, to steer us to a part of the number line that has things that we humans will find interesting when we run them through the computer. Okay, that's what we're doing. So we're saying, weight the probabilities such, shape a probability space such that when I put a text prompt, you're going to like veer me and warp me and twist me and send me right to this point in the space of all numbers, this multidimensional vector. That corresponds to like an image of an astronaut riding a horse.
Yeah.
When you put it into like a JPEG compression scheme, or that corresponds to Kanye West and the Weeknd song, or that corresponds to a short story, about monsters or whatever that we might get from ChatGPT. So we can say this is what we're doing with AI, and the way that we do this is we take just trillions of these bytes of data and of numbers. We just take so many numbers, hundreds of terabytes of these number files, and we train this set of weights so that it sort of it receives like almost like an impression. It's like you take this like flat piece of clay and you just mash all these things into it, and they all leave a trace, and so that it's got all the contours of all these different files that it's ever seen. And so that way, when you toss a marble in there, it's going to roll until it falls in a groove that corresponds to like a file that it's seen before. It's close. So
Yeah.
so we're shaping this probability space by just throwing all this hundreds of terabytes of data at it, so that we're likely, when we put a prompt in and we say steer me to a point in this space, we're likely to hit this thing that's interesting to us, that corresponds to some language that we trained it on, and not just a random noise thing. Now, it is possible to get noise back.
The Bitcoin conference is coming this May in Miami, and you do not want to miss out. Dan and I will be there. This 3-day event is the ultimate destination for anyone looking to stay ahead of the curve and work in the industry. Industry Day tickets are available for those who want to network with like-minded professionals and learn from the top experts in the field. For those who want the ultimate VIP experience, the Whale Pass is the way to go. With exclusive access to private events and top-level speakers, you'll get the inside scoop on the latest trends and insights in the industry. So why wait? Get your tickets now and join us at the Bitcoin conference in Miami, where the future of finance is being shaped today. Use code BCB23 to get 10% off tickets, and we will see you in Miami. So here's a basic question for you. So we've had these algorithms for Google's had a search algorithm for 20 something years, right? So what it sounds like you're describing is very similar to a search function. It's got a probability set in a giant model of data. It goes and finds it for you. That's a search function effectively, right?
Yeah.
But this, in an interview you had recently, you mentioned that it can reason at least at a limited level. Like I think it was a marble inside of a cup. You told it, or somebody told it, you go upstairs, you put it upside down on a bed, and then you ask the model, where's the marble? And the newest one, GPT-4, was able to reason that, well, the marble is on the bed because the cup was overturned. Therefore, the marble had to fall out onto the bed. It had to make those reasoning steps. How does that, do you understand, or can you give us a synopsis of how that is possible, that it can make that kind of a reasoning, or what seems to be reasoning?
So I can tell you, I would be surprised if so we can all tell different stories. We're kind of in the realm of, this is like a chaotic, probabilistic, like stochastic thing. We can tell different stories about why it works the way that it does. And some of those stories are going to be high quality and you can publish them in a paper or on archive. And some of them will be like folk stories, okay? Similar with like how our brains work. So I can't actually, like, I have not read a paper that covers the mechanics of how this works. I have talked to many smart people about language models and about at different points, like in the past 3 years. So, like, for instance, when I talked to someone in 2021 who was like a very smart large language model person, it wasn't clear to them. There were open questions around how the model is understanding grammar, and like how the relationship of parameter size to like language and facts, like how that relates. So the same thing I can tell you with its ability to make sequences. So the model has found when it solves the cup problem, when it solves the problem of somebody put a marble in a cup on a dresser, and then you want to move it to the bed, and you turn it over, and it reasons that now the marble must have fallen out on the bed. What's happening is it is doing the same thing it does when you ask it for a limerick about the man from Iraq or like whatever, it is like generating a word sequence. And for us humans, we read that word sequence as describing things in the world, as describing a story about a marble that fell out on the bed. And it's really wild that it corresponds to an actual way that a marble, like the marble doesn't fall out onto the ceiling, it falls out onto the bed. And like, it goes through multiple, and there's a lot of reasoning that like goes into this, because the person has to like get the thing off the shelf and has to turn it over. And, there's a set of steps, right? And you're like, how did it's not quite correct. Like, I mean, if you're imagining the marble, like, or if you're imagining the AI like iteratively building up a set of okay, so first it does this, and then it does this, and then it does this, like you would do, right? If you were talking through something. I mean, kind of maybe it's doing that, but like it's really just generating a set of like the next logical word. And so this is the thing that's kind of mind-blowing, right? How is it that a nest of probabilities that's designed to predict the next logical word and output interesting numbers, how did it output a number that corresponds to a story about the marble falling out on the bed? That's very strange.
I don't know,
okay?
man. That's what you're here to answer.
Well, like, again, I don't have a good answer for you. I don't know that anyone has a great answer for this. And this is why, we have to have some humility around some of the doom scenarios, because we are dealing with things, we have unleashed forces we do not understand fully, and we are plugging them into the world, and into these systems, and these things can make plans, and they can ask questions, or they appear to,
and they impact people. I mean, that we're already using the shit out of this. Like to bring that. One thought I have, and it's going to parlay into a question, is let me share our vantage point, and then let's hear yours, who's worked intimately around this space and written tons about it. And by the way, your work's phenomenal. We've combed a ton of your Substack. It's insanely accessible and well done.
Very much
we'll
so.
link it in the show notes. You should go read it. You're kind of our number one source for this stuff. So from our vantage point, like I'm thinking about last time I deep dove on this, I think 2017, 2018, I'm kind of just very high level. Nick Bostrom, Sam Harris, mostly doomsday stuff. I'm paying attention to like AlphaGo. We're in the realm of like chess, Go, video games, theoretically crazy. ChatGPT comes out. Now normies like the two of us, a couple firefighters who have just a unbelievably rudimentary understanding of the potential implications of this technology. Josh and I have just been staring at this thing, honestly awestruck. We're so much further than normies like us realized we were. My question to you, what's your take on how quickly things are accelerating? Are you sitting there going, no, guys, this type of stuff has been around for a while. You just now have access to it. Is the space moving quicker? And if so, why? And I know I'm asking a lot here, but one of the components of your work that's really I found interesting is how impactful human feedback has been on these models, right? They're spitting out tons of stuff, and then that's being refined by reinforced, human feedback. Is that a key player? Cue us into your perspective on how quickly this has moved. Is it similar to ours, or is it different?
Yeah, that is a live question. There is a school of thought that says that the large language models are kind of topping out, and we're reaching the limits of that approach, and we need like fundamentally new things. So there is a way, there's a framework for looking at this, which is that the things that we do with the transformer architecture, which is a new architecture that was invented in 2017. And all these models, GPT means generalized pre-trained transformer. So that transformer architecture has a specific kind of design, and it does a trick. It has a trick up its sleeve called attention maps, and basically tells the neural network for every word in a for every token in a sequence, or so let's say for every word in a sentence, because it's trained for language. For every word in a sentence, what is the relationship of that word to all the other words? So it figures out, like, so the subject of the sentence relates to like a lot of the words, like strongly. Maybe like a random adjective or adverb only relates to like the noun that's by it. And so it comes up with these maps that map all the words in the sentence to all the other words in the sentence, or all the tokens in its input to all the other tokens in its input. And it sends that along through the training in the encoder and the decoder process. And this is a sort of a shortcut that lets the GPT perform at a level that we would probably need a much larger network that was of a more simple architecture. So you can take these deep recurrent neural networks and you can just make them really huge, and you could probably get to where we are now. But we wouldn't be here where we are now. That was this, like GPT-3, much less GPT-4, would still be like off in the future at higher levels of Moore's law and higher levels of scaling if we had not discovered the transformer architecture and we're dealing with something simpler. So the question you're asking me then is, how many of these tricks and hacks are left out there that will suddenly just give a huge unlock? All of a sudden, like, you get enough stars and you level up, whatever the video game sound is. Like, this keeps happening in neural networks. Is we come up with a trick or a hack and it's an unlock, and we find a new room that has like a power up in it. And we're like, holy cow, now like this happened and there's a big shift and my character can fly, or now I have the grappling hook, or, whatever thing. So it's hard to say. It's impossible to say. It's not clear how many of these tricks we're going to need to get to, first, it's not clear what the end goal is, right? So different people have different definitions of AGI. For any one person's definition, how many unlocks and secret rooms and tricks are we away from that end goal? Okay. That's one thing. And then the other thing is, okay, so we don't find the tricks and the shortcuts. If we just do the whole map, like how big do we have to scale to get there? Or can we scale do we have to have the trick, or can we get there by scaling?
Right.
So these are all kind of live debates and live questions. But the potential for extreme surprise remains. Go ahead.
I've done a little bit of understanding this stuff, and so the difference between GPT, say 3, 3.5, and 4, is it mostly a bandwidth thing where it's given basically the token window or the ability to send it more information at once, and for it to aggregate, look through, and then spit out an inference based on that is just getting wider. Is that the primary difference besides like these little hacks and shortcuts and efficiencies?
No. I mean, so from a user perspective at inference time, a big difference will be the size of the token window. But there's also capability differences. Like, there are certain logic problems that GPT 3.5 couldn't solve that GPT 4 can solve. There are certain kinds of questions you can ask it that GPT 3.5 would just totally airball, and GPT 4 can just handle it. And it's because of, pardon me, it's not clear when we speak of scale. There are different ways to scale. You can add more what they call parameters, which is like parallel. Think of these as kind of parallel computation units. They're all firing at the same time. That's not quite right, but this is a way to think about them. The other way we can scale is just by taking more training passes, taking more time in training. So you have a smaller network and you train it on more data, or you train it with more passes. So you could actually think, okay, here's the same amount of electricity and the same amount of total like training cycles spent, but we either did it a few passes in wide parallel, or we did it like many passes in narrower parallel. These would probably have slightly different results. Not clear which they did for GPT-4 from GPT-3. So there's differences in architecture. There's differences in the training data. There's differences in the human feedback and the fine tuning. There's a lot of differences, and they're always trying to find at different stages of the pipeline, from data collection to and labeling to training to feedback and deployment and inference. They're always trying to find lots and lots of tricks to make it work better. And there's a lot of places to find to find tricks and to smooth things out and speed things up.
Okay. Just I want to bring this back to reality for a second for people listening who maybe have no clue what's going on here, and make this relevant in a way that they can understand. For somebody from my perspective, I've got no computer science background. I've never programmed a thing. I've played with Python, but it's just not my thing. I have Auto GPT running on my laptop. I've been playing with it for the last few days. This thing it built me a Twitter bot that can go and fuck with a specific person that I'm playing around with on Twitter. It's done that. I have absolutely no idea how to actually code that. GPT-4 was able to code me a program in Python that can transfer photos from an old hard drive I have, look for specific image files, transfer those over to another hard drive all automatically when I run the script. I mean, these types of things that that's a pretty simple script for most people that know what they're doing probably, but I had no idea how to do that, and it just did it for me. And it's the ability for people that have little to no understanding of how computers work to write their own programs, to have to kind of peek into the window of how this stuff works from a programming level is interesting. And that is scratching the very, very minute surface of what this stuff is capable of.
Yeah. I think this is a good opportunity, Jon, to segue into like out of the technical into just your general high level thoughts on implications. What are let's go back to the human feedback thing. One of the first things that comes to mind is some of what you've written is expressing one way to accelerate these systems, refine these systems, is this reinforced learning with human feedback. How important is that to these language models, let's say, and to their progression? And then how do you view that? Like, what risks present themselves with that? Because I think one of the high level thoughts we have is kind of what Josh is saying. With the power of this technology and the usefulness of this technology, it's going to be used, it already is being used and will continue to be used at mass scale by everyday folks that have no idea what's going on in the background, which indicates that what's going on in the background is actually incredibly important. The devil's in the details there. Reinforced human feedback, the implications that has. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so well, first I should just explain how the reinforcement learning with human feedback works. It's called RLHF. So you take the model that is pre-trained and you've shown it, hundreds of terabytes of tokens and words and images and sounds and stuff. And you have this probability space that's like sculpted in a certain way so that when you bounce a prompt off of it, it bounces into a region of the number line that you want, right? It hits one of those probability lobes and it lands you where you want. Well, maybe one of these lobes has like some racism or some sexism in it. Maybe one of these lobes has a bunch of fake facts about the Middle East, and then one of these lobes has nonsense, like the wrong idea about the Great Depression or something. So what you want to do is you want to shrink those regions of space so that you're less likely to hit them and for them to point you to a number that is an answer you don't want, a number that you don't like that offends you, a number that is historically fake or this fake news or this disinfo or like whatever kind of thing we're on about. So the question is, okay, we did the best we could to shape this probability space with the training, but we can take it further. Now we want to fine tune. Now we want to squeeze some things and blow some things out and really just kind of sculpt. We're at the stage where we're working with small knives and we're kind of feathering, right? So we're going to sculpt this thing, and how are we going to do it? So one thing you can do is there's a step called fine tuning, where you take a set of documents that you really like a lot, and you think are very factual, and they're the kind of thing you want, and you do another training pass there. So you kind of dial it in. Then the other thing you do is for reinforcement with human learning, or reinforcement learning with human feedback, is this is an oversimplification. This isn't exactly how it works, but this is more or less how it works. Is you give the model a prompt and it puts out an output, and then you ask your panel of humans, thumbs up or thumbs down on this output, this number that the model found. I gave the model a prompt, it found a number. Is this the number we like, or is it the number we don't like? The number that corresponds to a good thing, or the number that corresponds to a bad thing, a lie, or like, some nonsense or gibberish or whatever. So you just do that a whole bunch. Actually, really what you do is you just train a whole separate AI to think like some humans. You take your panel of humans and you train a set of an AI to be like to learn thumbs up or thumbs down on these inputs, and then that model trains the other model by being like, my panel of humans would give this a thumbs up or thumbs down, so you can go do it really fast, right?
Right.
But we can say that the humans are training the AI by thumbs up and thumbs down of it. So that's RLHF. And so what RLHF you've got these humans, and these humans are being like, I really like this number, I really dislike this, I like this output, I dislike this output. So then the question is, who are those humans? Where did you find them?
Yes.
What are their values? Like, what religion are they? How educated are they? Are they jerks? Are they nice people? Because you're going to be asking them about a lot of stuff. And then also, what are you trying to fix? If you are trying to fix that the model is racist, are these people white? Or are they black? Or are they like Nigerian?
Right.
If you're trying to fix that the
So
model it becomes a political football. If you're trying to fix that the model is like saying wrong facts about the Great Depression, are they monetarists? Are they chartalists? Are they go ahead. Yeah.
The thing, I think one thing that people are thinking in the back of their head while you're explaining how this can be curated is, who's the one doing the curating? Because if there is just, let's say OpenAI just has this monopolistic force, right? And they decide they have a political leaning and they can curate this so that their political leaning is at the forefront, and you're only getting information from a certain purview of a political spectrum instead of maybe the wide spectrum that you'd want, or a certain subset of people would want. There's a lot, seems like there's a lot of danger in centralization of this kind of stuff. Can you speak to that a little bit, and how maybe we could keep this kind of brief, because there's at least one or two more big topics I'd like to get to. But yeah, the centralization of this seems really worrying to me. Maybe speak to that a little bit about how we can keep that from happening.
Dan and myself, Josh, talk a lot on this show about running a Bitcoin node. If you are a serious Bitcoiner and you want to verify, not trust, you will take this step at some point. For our node setups, we run software and hardware from Start9 Labs. This setup enables us to run a reliable and secure Bitcoin node, but then, if we so choose, experiment and graduate way beyond that towards many different areas of sovereign computing. You can download Embassy OS for free and install it on your own hardware, or you can buy one of Start9's plug-and-play devices. We highly recommend these devices. Start9 builds reliable and extremely easy-to-use products backed up with incredible customer support. Run a Bitcoin node, run a Lightning node, run a NOSTR relay. Take control of your photos, messages, passwords, pictures, and data, all on one device. Embassy OS operating system is the distribution platform open source software has been waiting for. Visit start9.com. We only recommend and endorse companies that we believe in, and Swan Bitcoin is a company we believe in. I have been personally using Swan to DCA into Bitcoin since May of 2020, when Bitcoin was the wee price of $9,500. Swan's interface and on-ramp is incredibly simple and user-friendly. With Swan, you can dollar cost average daily, weekly, or monthly, or conduct a smash instant buy whenever you want. Withdrawals to cold storage are completely free and can be totally automated. Truly set and forget. Swan wants you to hold your Bitcoin keys, and support is one click or phone call away if you need help during this process. Buying Bitcoin is just the tip of the iceberg. Swan also has a Bitcoin IRA product, business and nonprofit offerings, resources for financial advisors, private services for high net worth clients, and phenomenal educational materials. Visit swan.com for more information. And at swan.com/fire, you can learn about and receive Swan Premium for 1 year.
Yeah. So to the extent that OpenAI or Google or Amazon, or there's one of like 5 models that we run, then it's going to reflect, the model is going to reflect the politics and the view of reality and of history that the people that fine-tuned it and that RLHF'd it think is 2 thumbs up.
Yes.
It is not going to reflect. So the one answer there, an answer that OpenAI is going to give us, is they're going to say, well, look, guys, we are rolling out a feature, and this is happening. They're saying we're going to roll out a feature that lets you do your own fine-tuning and reinforcement learning layer over our base model. It's called a foundation model. So GPT-4 is a foundation model. And they're going to say, you can take this foundation model, and through our APIs, we will let you fine-tune it. Now, they are going to be watching over your shoulder while you do this, because they do not want to fine-tune the Nazi model, Okay.
Right.
You know, they do not want to fine tune the US blew up the Nord Stream pipeline model. or whatever, the anti-vax model, you know,
That
don't
which
take
shall
the
not be
vaccine.
said.
Yeah, the spike
Right.
protein is causing myocarditis model. They don't or whatever the medical thing is.
Ooh,
So
you got
they
some
don't want
dangerous
you
ideas rolling
fine-tuning
around
that.
in that head.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't want you fine-tuning this heretical stuff, this dangerous stuff. So they're going to be kind of watching over your shoulder, but within a certain limit, they're going to come up with an Overton window, and they're going to be like, within the Overton window, you can do your own fine-tuning on this, and we will let you.
Yeah.
And so that's centralization. Decentralization is the model weights are open source, and I can download them, and I can fine tune them to whatever I like. If I want the Seymour Hersh fine tune take, if I want the John Mearsheimer Ukraine take, I can get it. If I want the Nakamoto like anti-central banking take, I can get that in a fine tune package, and then I can give it to my kids and be like, here, learn you some economics or something, you know. And if Paul Krugman wants the Keynesian, you know, fine tuning package, then he can just go full Keynesian with his grandkids. But this will, you
Maybe
know,
we can let
because
these
there's
models.
nobody
We can
looking
have the
over your shoulder.
Nakamoto.
What?
We could have the Nakamoto and the Keynesian subset just battle it out in digital space, and we can see what hashes out, right?
Yeah, we could have them
so
debate.
Back to this.
Yes.
Back to the recursive learning you mentioned. So this is something that I think Eliezer, when he speaks about this danger of alignment, he's talking a lot about this recursive learning loop that you mentioned, which is the AI training the AI. And like you've mentioned a couple of times, this is a pseudo black box for a lot of us, for just about all of us. We don't really understand what's going on here, just like we don't really understand what's going on in our own brains. So when this recursive learning model does what it does, which is train itself and recursively train itself, there might be a certain point at which there's a takeoff, or people have called it the singularity in the past. At that point, if we don't have, and this is, I'm just regurgitating what Eliezer has said, if at that point of singularity where this thing's intelligence takes off beyond us, where we don't understand it, and it may not necessarily be aligned with us, that's when things could get dangerous. Do you believe that his statement about this alignment only being, it's only a one-shot chance, like if we're misaligned with this thing when this happens, do you think that that's a correct take, that we're kind of fucked because it's already gone and there's no way to stop that thing once it's out past, it's like the horse has gotten out of the fence and it's just running wild, there's no way to catch this thing? Do we have more than one chance at this alignment, do you think?
And the other question there, to even step back, is, John, like, is it likely we're even going to ever create something this powerful? I guess is another sort of presupposition behind that question too.
Yeah, maybe to tackle if you think it's possible to create that based on the models and like the transformer model we have now. And if so, can alignment be a multi-try thing? Can we give it another shot?
Yeah, I think really the former question of are we going to get there is the real question, because the way that Eliezer frames this, it's like saying, look, man, you know, imagine that you are high on drugs and you are in a convenience store and you have a gun to the head of the clerk and you've just told her to give you all her money. Now, don't you think that you're screwed? Like, what are you going to do in this situation? It's like, well, I would have maybe not done drugs, and I would have not gotten a gun. I would, you know, so the way that he puts the pieces together, well, yes, of course. Like, if there is an unaligned, super intelligent AI, that would be scary, and I'm sure it would be quite bad. You know, so then the question is, are we going to get to this? What he thinks of as an unaligned, super intelligent AI? Is this going to happen? My feeling is probably not, but different people have different feelings, and we're kind of in the realm of feelings, because there's a fundamental problem here, which is that no one has ever seen a super intelligent AI. And so we're trying to reason about a thing that no one has, to our knowledge, encountered, you know? Now, maybe one of the ancient Greek gods was a super intelligent AI from Zeta Reticuli or something like this, but you know, to our knowledge,
now we're talking.
We
now
have not, you
mushrooms.
know, unless we get into some ancient alien stuff, unless we go full Rogan here.
It's Bob Lazar type shit on here.
Yeah, man. To our knowledge, we have not encountered this kind of thing before. So we're trying to reason about stuff that we don't, that's like
Right.
entirely hypothetical.
It's
It's
all
very, very
theoretical.
difficult. Yeah, it's very theoretical.
I guess to
So
fine tune that question a little bit.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I guess this is the take that I got from his take on it. So he's looking at this as a probabilistic set. So if alignment is, he seems to suppose that alignment is a very, very fine grain in the sand of a giant beach. Like, in order to fine tune that alignment, we have to find that singular piece of sand, sorry. And there's a whole lot out there to look through. And if we're off by even one grain of sand, this thing very likely, even unintentionally, will just kill us all. That's kind of like the way I interpreted what he was saying. Do you suppose that might be accurate? Like, we have to just be dead on, and we have to be dead on the first time, assuming AGI.
Yeah, assuming AGI is the kicker. I am unwilling to say no. I am unwilling to just completely rubbish the man's ideas, because I don't know. Like, from my perspective, if it's me versus Eliezer, only one of us is exercising a great degree of epistemic humility about the future, and that would be me, because he is quite certain that our goose is cooked. I am not. I'm just going to say, look, this is a really weird situation. I don't understand my own mind. Again, my brain is a black box. I really don't know what, if you took away, the basic animal impulses and just left my neocortex free to like run and to think about math problems and do AlphaGo stuff. Like, I don't know if I would paperclip maximize us all out of existence, or if I would, make us all immortal,
right.
And put us on starships, or something. I can't, like, this is very hard to reason about. So we're just sort of reasoning. And so I have to leave the space open that he's right, or not that he's right in detail, but he's right directionally. That what is happening right here, right now, that we're watching is a very, very bad thing. I'm going to say that is a possibility that I seriously entertain. That we are headed in the wrong direction, and we should turn this stuff off and never look at it again. I think that's possible. And one of the reasons I think it's possible, and that I have to entertain it, is because the space between the really good outcome and the really bad outcome is like, it's this much. Okay, it looks like this. If we have an AI that can invent new physics, then the AI can invent new physics. And so the AI either invents like a wormhole and we can like populate the stars, or the AI just like kills us all. It invents some physics that turns us all to goo for its own ends, right? Or a bad guy, like a supervillain, like, just say like an AI that can invent new biology. It either invents a cure for cancer, or an open source model of the kind that I personally advocate. I think we should have open source decentralized AI so that it's not centralized. And I'm sorry I didn't really get to that part of that question. I kind of ramble a little bit, but the opposite of open AI controls all the things is everyone has their own model and it's decentralized AI. There's a danger there. If a decentralized AI, like Stable Diffusion is, you can run on your laptop, if it can invent new proteins and invent new molecules, can it invent like a nerve gas that kills on a 24-hour time delay or something like this? And the space between I invented a new nerve gas, or I invented a virus with like a 99% fatality rate that is asymptomatic and spreads with an R of the measles, and I invented a virus that will cure cancer or make you live forever. The space between those is probably kind of small, because they both presume a model that is superhumanly good at biology, or a model that's superhumanly good at physics. Okay. Yeah. So then, even without any of this AGI alignment stuff, just the humans, what are the humans going to do with that power? That's the question. You've got a model that can create new materials. Right. You've got a model that can create new physics. You've got a model that can create new biology. What is Kim Jong-un going to do with it?
Probably kill ourselves before the AGI has a shot at us.
Yeah. So you don't actually need an AGI. You need an unaligned evil dictator, that is, or a crazy person, are like some eco-terrorist, an eco-terrorist that thinks that humans are a cancer. Like, what are they going to do with the model? We're going to get there before we get into godlike singularity zone, most likely. And we may get there in like the next 5 years, maybe even in the next 24 months. Wow. This is the danger question, right? It's like, for every scenario that I can spin about the model solving a really hard problem that has vexed humanity, like longevity, or like free energy, are super light, super strong materials. For every one of those things, you can just move right close adjacently and find the downside to that, and find the thing that's bad, that leverages the same knowledge and the same capabilities, but it's just in the hands of a bad person.
Yeah, you took the next topic right out of my mouth. I was going to talk about the human implications. It makes me think of something you said on another podcast recently. You were talking about China and how they are just not data bound. They don't have privacy laws. They don't have copyright constraints. They're probably going to have the biggest input of data and information into these models. Do you have legitimate concerns about autocratic regimes kind of winning the AI or AGI race, if you will?
Yeah, this is a tough one for me because, this is something I'm inclined to worry about, but a lot of ML people are not as worried, because they're like, look, there just aren't that many GPU clusters in the world, and it's sort of like a nuclear bomb. Somebody sets off a nuclear bomb somewhere, we can kind of find it. You can't really do a nuclear detonation in secret right now. It's apparently quite hard to train a GPT-4 class model completely in secret. You need a certain number of leading edge NVIDIA GPUs, and you have to put them together in some place where we can probably find this thing. Like the NSA can probably find it. We probably know what's out there. At the very least, NVIDIA may know what's out there. So,
yeah.
So this is a theoretical concern that I have typically had, but I am often told, by people that know more about this than me, that that's not the super top of mind thing at the moment. Like, China, I will say this, if China takes Taiwan and they take TSMC intact, and then they have TSMC and they control it, in a scenario where they control TSMC and they can just get even that, in a scenario where they control TSMC and they use the leverage that they have to keep TSMC running, because TSMC requires inputs from all over the world. It requires inputs from the Dutch. It requires certain special kinds of inputs from the US. So what China would do is they would take, and I don't want to get too far into this, we don't have much time, but China would take TSMC, which makes the world's most leading chips that we use to train the AIs, and they would say, look, we have this now. If you want to continue to have iPhones, and you want Google to continue to be a valuable company and not a scrap heap, and you want all of your American tech to continue to work, we will keep selling you chips, but you're going to keep TSMC running. We're all going to keep TSMC running. And what we're going to do is we're just going to take a bunch of these. We're going to take a bunch of these, and we're going to do our AIs with them. Thanks. So there are paths and ways there that China could basically seize the high end of global chip production, and they could train some kind of monster. But this seems to me to be like, this is a worry, but like, the China worry starts to kick in more when it's like, okay, we're just going to pause training, and we're not going to do any, we're not going to do our own development, and we're basically going to collapse the market for high-end GPUs so that Kim Jong-un can afford a bunch of them, or like, Xi Jinping can afford like a whole bunch of high-end GPUs, because the US is like, well, look, guys, we're on the 6-month pause. We don't need to buy any GPUs over here in the West, because we're not training models right now. So now these things are super cheap, and so you guys can just like buy a ton of them, in some server farm in Africa, and the Chinese can go down there and they can run it, and they can train a big model or what have you. So there's, but I worry more about, like I said, a very powerful, or like even a model that's already out there, like take Llama, the large Llama model. What if that thing can do biology, like to a really high level, and we don't know it yet? What if there's an unlock here, or what if there's a fine tuning of it that is like really good at making, you know, some critical input to like a bioweapon. This sounds science fictiony, but it could happen.
Yeah. John, we only have got a couple minutes left here, and I just want to get your opinion on somebody listening to this who's totally lost, wants to understand what they can do to maybe protect themselves, or, you know, how can people protect themselves against AI just taking their job, or what can they do to put themselves in a more advantageous position to be ready for the near future where these artificial intelligences can do a lot of these white collar jobs, maybe your job. Is it best to leverage them to use it to the best of your ability to make yourself better at your job? Any other input on that for people listening?
Yeah, I think this is I think that if you have a job that you are good at and that you like doing, you're already like very lucky, you know, because a lot of people don't have jobs that they're good at or that they like doing. So if you have a job that you're good at and that you like doing, then you should immediately and with all haste learn to use AI to do it better than the other guys at your work that are not learning to use AI to do the job better. So you should learn to use AI to outperform. If you have a job like fighting fires, that AI is not, I mean, AI is not going to touch you guys for a while. And that's because something called Moravec's paradox that you can look up. It's in robotics. Yeah. So you like any kind of blue collar thing is more insulated. So, you know, that I would not worry as much, but jobs that involve simple manipulation.
A lot of new plumbers out there.
Plumbers, electricians, all kinds. Yeah. So any job that involves symbol manipulation is under threat. So if you're sending emails, if you're composing articles, if you're doing, you know, you're doing pictures, you know, ideas, sequences of actions, plans, stuff like that. This is difficult, and I think the best approach is to just be like, yeah, you know, I have the ChatGPT window open all day. I'm using every tool that comes across my desk. I'm learning to use new tools. I'm just kind of trying to ride the train here, and hope for the best. I mean, I tell you, I have kids. I have a 14-year-old about to go into high school. You know, I have two other daughters that are younger, and it's kind of fun because I don't feel as much pressure as a parent to steer them into an occupation because who knows? You know, who knows what jobs are going to be available by the time they get out. So now I'm just more like, hey, you know, figure out that thing that you love doing and do it, and then use AI to help you do it. And hopefully by the time you need to make money, you will be able to do it using that skill set.
Yeah, a lot of change happening. John, if you have anything you want to point people to before you go, we'll obviously link your Substack, Twitter handle, Substack. Anything else?
Yeah. Well, we're also covering a lot of this at Return.life. I'm the editor there at Return.life, and that's another project I'm involved in. So people should check that out. So we cover a lot of these AI issues, and we do a nice AI roundup weekly at Return.life.
Cool.
Appreciate you, John. It was an awesome conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You guys.
One of the most exciting companies and projects that Josh and myself, Dan, have come across in the last few years is Crowd Health. If you're already familiar with Crowd Health and have interest in checking it out, then use code BLUE for a significant 3-month trial discount. Healthcare is an incredibly confusing, stressful, and cumbersome space to navigate. Crowd Health provides a remarkable and workable alternative to traditional healthcare setups for a fraction of typical premiums. It's essentially the decentralization of healthcare. You can leverage the power of Bitcoin alongside healthcare crowdfunding to put decisions about your health back in your hands. Each member gets access to great healthcare services as well as their own dedicated care advocate that will negotiate your bills and find members the best doctors and hospitals. Go to joincrowdhealth.com to learn more. And if you're interested in the Bitcoin-specific crowdfund, go to joincrowdhealth.com/Bitcoin. BCB listeners can enjoy healthcare freedom with code BLUE to get your first 3 months for a substantial discount at $99 a month. That is code BLUE. Crowd Health is not health insurance, which we feel is a wonderful thing. If you have healthcare needs or concerns, seriously, give Crowd Health a look. The Blue Collar Bitcoin podcast is brought to you by arguably the most legendary company in Bitcoin, CoinKite. They are the producers of the renowned Cold Card, the world's most trusted and secure Bitcoin signing device, built with a plethora of features fit for Bitcoin beginners all the way up to the most advanced of users. This device is a one-stop shop for your Bitcoin custody needs, and something the two of us have trusted for years. CoinKite also manufactures the Block Lock, a gorgeous e-ink digital display art piece sitting in the background of what seems to be every serious Bitcoiner on the planet. Block Lock can be programmed to scroll through key Bitcoin metrics including price, hash rate, next halving date, and much more. Boy oh boy will this thing look good in your living room or office. They're also the makers of many other security and fun products for all users, no matter their technical aptitude. Support our show and get a delicious discount on CoinKite products by following our affiliate link on the screen and in the notes, and using code BCB for 5% off the Cold Card.
All right, Josh,
Ooh.
we just finished with
Wow.
Jon Stokes. We decided to do a little impromptu debrief here just between the two of
It's-
us. What are
Dude,
your
I'm
thoughts
just-
here? Start us off.
I don't even know where to begin, man. I mean, experimenting with this stuff for the last few days, this is going to be a massive, massive thing. I mean, if you're not living under a rock and you have at least given GPT a few prompts to understand what it's capable of, and, we were talking during the discussion about the marble inside the cup. So I did this yesterday with GPT-4. I said, I put 3 marbles in a cup. I walked upstairs from the first floor. I overturned the cup on a dresser, I think I told it. And then I picked up 2 of the marbles and I placed them on the bed. And I asked it, where are all the marbles? And it identified immediately 2 of the marbles are on the dresser, 2 of them are on the bed. There's so much. I mean, I think we're giving it too much credit, as John just alluded to, that like it understands physics and that it's doing all these other things, which in our minds we're thinking, it's walking through this step by step. It's remembering that there are 2 marbles here, the other 2 are over there, and because of gravity, they would fall out of the cup and all that. I think it's probably a lot simpler than that in the background, but the fact that it can follow and reason and rationalize all of these things is just mind-blowing to me. And
Yeah.
where this goes from here, just being able to make those rationalizations means that the planning it can do. Dan and we've been talking offline about Auto GPT. I've been playing around with that. You can give it a goal, and then you can give it 5 goals, and you can say, I want you to accomplish this goal, and then use these subset of goals to go do it. And you can unleash it onto the internet. It'll use Google search to look up whatever it is your goal is oriented towards. It'll make itself a plan, and it'll execute that plan using ChatGPT recursively to continue asking itself questions until it finds you the answers that you're looking for. And it'll take all of the information it finds, it'll aggregate it into a file that you can then use however you want. I mean, this stuff just blows my mind. And it's what we're looking at right now. Not even the stuff that could be here in 6 months to a year.
Yeah. The forward-facing implications of this thing are absolutely crazy. I mean, even as just 2 amateur podcasters who are firefighters, we're using it all the time for different shit. I have it open way more than I expected I would. I am going to sound like a Luddite here, and I may listen back on this and say, oh, that was a definitely just an initial take. If I was to try to quantify the amount of time I've spent studying AI, I'm probably in like the 40-hour range. So, I mean, I'm a baby in this topic. Absolute baby.
Oh, we both are. But I mean,
I'm not optimistic right now, to be honest with you. Like the 2 areas that make me pessimistic about this and legitimately concerned. Josh, I think I have AI anxiety. I need treatment. They call 911, get the local fireman in here to kind of calm me down.
Don't worry, you'll be protected there in the hospital before they kick you out 2 hours later and tell you, here, take some Xanax and chill out.
Oh man, we had an anxiety attack at 4 a.m. that brought me to my knees. A call number 4 after midnight. Rough night. Anyways, here's the 2 things that are making me pessimistic. The first one is that, and this is going to hit more for our audience here talking about Bitcoin. I'm struggling to see how this is not going to be extremely censored, controlled, and laced with biases, which we already have way too much of in the world. Like, I view this technology as something that's going to be theoretically decentralized, but practically centralized, much like the internet trajectory itself right now, right?
Mhm.
Theoretically, the internet protocol stack could be decentralized, but over time, we know the model we have today, it's extremely centralized, and we're trying to unwind that. He ended the episode, Jon ended the episode saying, what do you do to protect yourself? Use the living
Use the
shit
hell
out
out
of
of
it.
this.
Use the hell out of it. So now you and I are using the hell out of a model with a ton of reinforcement learning human feedback from people we don't know, from sources we don't know. And it's shaping a lot of what we do. It's shaping how people compete. It's shaping whole industries. So there's the centralizing effect that's just my initial hot take on this is, wow.
Yeah.
A
Before
lot
you
of
move
people are
on-
going to be deeming this as truth and fact.
For sure.
And there's a ton of nuance and gray behind the whole thing. Go ahead with your thought, and then I'll go with number 2.
All right. So here's my. So I clearly we're both pretty much in the same place as far as this stuff's concerned, but there is some hope in the fact that a lot of these language models are getting leaked onto the internet. So I don't know if Jon had enough time to really flesh this out during the discussion, but there's effectively 3 parts to the way this works. They train a shit ton of GPUs on a bunch of data, right? And then once they're trained, they curate that data set, and then that model is set in stone. So what ChatGPT-4 is doing right now
It
is
spits out
referencing
a
a model
file, right? That's actually
Right.
not that enormous. I think he even said like 200 gigabytes or something like
exactly.
that. Pretty small.
So Lambda or is it Lambda?
Llama?
Llama, yeah.
Yeah.
That's Facebook's model. It got leaked onto the internet. So it's all out there right now. So if you want and you have a GPU farm or you have even a single GPU, it might take forever for the prompt to work, but you could download that model data. You could run your own, if you have a decent graphics GPU in your computer, you could run it yourself and you can have it curated however you like. And this is what he was inferring when he talked about the decentralized model that could exist. But I'm at least optimistic in the fact that there's no way this stuff stays under wraps. It will get out into the wild, and then people will be able to do what it is they want with it, which is introducing another danger, which I think this is the thing that you're going to get to next, which is, so we have the danger of the centralized model, which is that they control and they curate everything we're allowed to see through this AI envelope, right? And then the other side of this, the other danger is that they don't do that. This does get out into the wild. And then there are crackpots out there that will use it to make bombs or use it to make bioweapons or whatever other terrible thing they want to do with it. So either direction, you could see negatives. On the positive side, this kind of reminds me of like this. I think this is where the term Luddite originated. Was Malthus back in the 1800s said that there's no way the Earth can have more than a population of 200 million people. Well, technology got us to a place where we can farm almost automated, and we can support 6 to 9 billion people at the moment. And things got better because of technology. So there's a ton of downsides that I can imagine for this. And as humans, we're just kind of presupposed to see all the negatives, myself included. And I see a lot of negatives for this.
Yeah.
But there are implications, and there's a ton of ways this could make the world massively better if harnessed correctly.
For sure. Yeah.
The problem is that harnessing it correctly across the spectrum of people that are going to have access to it. Yeah, I don't know.
To comment on the danger part and then flip to optimistic. So the other potentially censorship centralizing force goes hand in hand with danger, because basically what Jon Stokes theorizes and what you can already sort of see unfolding, at least in the language realm, is just superhuman ability. This takes Dan and Josh and makes us superhuman researchers, which obviously we have technologies that have done it before, but this is exponentially.
This is next level.
It's exponentially increasing it. Back to the way I started the episode talking about we're on fold 36 here, and these folds are happening faster. So superhuman ability, both
Dude,
for
hey,
good.
actually, speaking of that, in the show notes for this episode, I'm going to put the exact output that AutoGPT made for Jon Stokes' background. I'll put it.
Heck yeah.
We'll have it in the show notes for you to read exactly what this thing dug up.
It
Go
did
ahead.
its own research. But so the superhuman ability for good and for bad. The problem is the superhuman ability for bad, right? He's talking about bioweapons and new physics and all this different shit. Well, that's going to be a vector for censorship and government control, right? Because this
Absolutely.
technology is so dangerous, we need massive regulation, right?
For
Which
sure.
is understandable. You can get that argument, but that's going to make decentralization even a more uphill battle, right? Now to flip over to the optimistic side, you're totally right. These are things that I'm not giving credence to. Like, this thing could drastically increase human productivity. Maybe it's able to get food and water to the world's most impoverished way faster than we ever imagined. And the base level of human flourishing reaches a point in a decade that we thought would take a century, right?
For
and
sure.
these are the types of things that could
maybe this solves
unlock.
the problems with fusion that we haven't figured out yet. Maybe energy problems will be something of the past completely, because it discovers a way that we haven't figured out yet to execute that in a way that would make energy almost free for the world. I mean, that's a possibility.
Yeah.
And imagine what that does to, I mean, we didn't even talk about deflation during this episode. I mean, Jeff Booth's thesis on deflation, this is the exclamation mark on that, in my view. Like, this is the thing that is going to show up and deflate the world.
Yeah.
Because it just makes everything super cheap. So we've been talking about Auto GPT. We signed up for a plan which costs, it's like $50 is the minimum charge, but they charge you per use, right? Over the last 3 days, I've used it nonstop playing around with it. It's charged us 71 cents. I mean, this is like probably a good couple hours of running this thing constantly, and 71 cents. So if it was doing something effective for you, like you created your own secretary for your business, the secretary answers text messages that are coming in, even possibly answers phone calls for you, does scheduling, does all the things a secretary could do, and it might cost you 70 cents in a day. Just think about the deflationary impact that creates and the job losses.
Right. I forget who I said this on with recently, but I said something like, you know, it's easy when people have cried wolf over time and said such and such is going to happen, and then it never comes to fruition. And they say again, such and such is going to happen, and it never comes to fruition. You're conditioned to think they're all full of shit. It's never going to happen. As we've moved into the digital age, people have been barking for decades now that tons of jobs are going to be disintermediated, and on net jobs are going to go down, and it hasn't happened. Well, I theorize that time has just gotten here, because back to the folds, this thing is moving so exponentially quickly. And he basically said, if you're in any kind of work that involves symbol aggregation,
which is a lot of fucking work,
this thing's coming for you. And the more I use it, the more I'm awestruck by just the plethora of areas this is going to impact. One of the ones that's most top of mind for me, and I was asking my brother who works as a guidance counselor in a high school, is like, how is education's going to need to change on a freaking dime? Like the model of, hey kids, go away for 3 weeks and write an essay. I think those days are numbered. Like you said, school systems move slowly, but I think testing's going to change. I think standardized testing is going to come back in full force. I think a lot of essays are going to be done on air-gapped computers in a certain computer lab where you have to produce an output in 2 hours. Sounds scary, but in a way, Josh, it could be a good way to decipher who's actually intelligent and who's kind of full of shit. Like, hey, you can't use all these tools. Let's see what you got right in front of you without 2 weeks of research time. But it feels like that's the way education's going to have to move. Don't you kind of know what I'm saying there?
I totally know what you're saying, but it's kind of an exercise in futility, don't you think? Because writing an essay, if you can write an essay or not, does that really matter anymore? I mean,
yeah, you're right.
I think
maybe essays are out and it's more like reasoning based, problem solving based exams aren't, because writing is no longer, you no longer need to know how to ride a horse and plow a field. So that's not in a high school.
Like using
curriculum.
a typewriter is a skill that nobody needs anymore. And we don't, I mean, I'm sure we had typewriter classes long after they were already well relegated to the past, but that's no longer an option. Like, this is going to be so obvious to so many people. So I think so quickly. And I don't know. I think it's a fool's errand to even hazard a guess as to how this is going to play out, because this is just something that we've never seen unfold so quickly. I mean, the internet is probably the best analog. That happened over a period of, say, 20 years. This is going to happen over a period of, I don't know, from here, it seems like less than 5 years.
Dude, his comment about kids' jobs it hit me. I mean, we Josh and I each have 2 kids. Trying to steer your child towards a vocation is like, it seems
I don't know how you
like
can
an
do it right now.
exercise in futility. Who
Dude,
in
can
the
you imagine if
world
you're a
knows what's
lawyer?
going to be viable? Yeah.
Can you imagine being a lawyer right now? I mean, I just made Jim and I were working on something for this small business, and I made a contract with GPT-4 in like 30 seconds that was solid as hell, and we're good. Like,
Dude, think about like it's going to be funny to watch. Not funny because these are real people, but like let's take the lowest hanging fruit in medicine, radiology. Like when they digest, and this is going to happen in my mind, and I'm no expert, but it feels like it's either happening now or it's going to happen in the next 5 years when they realize like, oh my God, this is way better than us. Like right now, it's way better. We just need one guy monitoring 100 AIs looking at scans. Like,
right.
I mean, the point is it could wipe clean whole industries in short order unless they just pretend like it's not doing what it's doing.
For sure. And I think that's already one of the first things that you were using machine learning for was radiology. Like they're recognizing scans for, I think it was lung cancer. And they found this is a couple of years ago. I listened to a podcast where they talked about how the machine learning model was more accurate than like 95% of radiologists. And that was 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, I don't know.
I've been thinking about our job. I mean, I really think we're just going to be at some point in our career with how young we are, we're basically just going to be input slaves. Maybe slaves isn't the right. We're going to be
lifting fat people slaves. That's what we do. We lift a fat person. The AI tells us, all right, this is my assessment. Here's the medications you're supposed to give them. Draw it up.
Yeah. Like, and I think the part of the reason I say that is having the humility to recognize I fuck up all the time. I consider myself a good paramedic. I view you as a good paramedic. Most of the people we work with. The most prominent example is 2 shift days ago. I won't lay out all the specifics. We didn't give this med, but we were considering giving a med on a serious trauma patient. Ambulance partner and I, Dave, this was on our radar. We didn't give it. And then afterwards, somebody else reminded us like, hey, that patient had like one of the key contraindications to that medication you were about to give. And you're like, man, I am just a flesh and bone, flawed brain human trying to reason through these calls. They're complicated, especially when you're responding to 911. Back to like, this thing's just going to be better. You input the vital signs, you throw in their med history, especially for like repeat patients where it has more data. It's going to give us prompts and we're just going to be basically cross-checking them and then carrying them out.
I don't even think we'll be inputting the data. I mean, think about the iPad we're using has already got a microphone on it. It's got the ability to listen and interpret. It's going to just listen in on the questions, or maybe even it's hard to imagine, man, but I could see it happening where it just listens, or it even asks the questions. Like you're literally just a meat puppet that walks this thing in there, talks to the patient, helps them get onto a cot, puts them in the ambulance, and it tells you what to do.
A meat puppet. Hey, dude, if we can get AI robots to run our ambulance calls at night, I'm all in. I'll run them during the day, and then we can unleash the AI at night and just stay asleep.
For sure.
Hey, what are your thoughts on, before we close this out, what are your thoughts on its implications on Bitcoin? Let me tell you my first thought, which isn't going to be specific.
Go ahead, and I got one.
All right, this is going to be controversial. It's going to irk some people, and I think I could on one side argue, and maybe we will get into this, why Bitcoin is best positioned to perform in an exponentially moving digital future like this, because it's tethered to real world energy output. Back to our last basics episode on proof of work.
Yep.
What it does make me think, though, with how quickly the world is going to be moving and how fast problems are going to be solved and how much things are going to be changing, to put total and complete reliance on one existing technology, one could argue seems a little bit naive. Bitcoin's going to be here for 300 years. It's the future instantiation of all things monetary. Yeah, I have as much conviction as anyone. I know you do too, but the world's going to be changing so quickly and these tools are going to be so powerful. It's hard to just posit a guess as to what money's even going to look like in 100 years. You kind of know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. My first thought when you asked how this is going to affect Bitcoin is, I think one of the primary things this is going to affect first and foremost, which it's already doing. Like there's a language model that helps you. I think it's GPT as well, but it's called Copilot. When you're writing code, It helps you write code. It gives you suggestions or tells you this is where you fucked up. So I think the primary thing this is going to do for Bitcoin is supercharge development for people that are developers and are working on it. I mean, even a bonehead like me could probably step into a development environment right now, copy and paste some code into GPT and be like, hey, how do I make it do this? And it'll spit out a function for me to copy and paste back in there to do it. So I'm now considering being a contributor to Bitcoin as a programmer.
You're looking
so
at a
you're
dev.
all aware.
Yep.
I'm a dev now. I think it's going to supercharge that. It's going to give the ability for people to debug code faster, better, stronger. Assuming there's no weaknesses, I mean, you could just drop the entire Bitcoin data set into this thing and ask it to look for weaknesses and prod at it. I think it's going to make it stronger in a lot of ways. But on the other side of it, yeah, there's no way to know where this is going to go. There's no way to know what develops past this. Or it seems to me I'm this reasoning meat puppet that seems to think that Bitcoin is a very well positioned for it to do well in this future. But are there weaknesses that we haven't seen? Are there going to be attack vectors using this to attack Bitcoin that we haven't thought of? I don't know.
I would say to put a check in the Bitcoin camp, Bitcoin's profound simplicity is a huge advantage here. Yeah. Bitcoin is a really simple protocol. It's a very simple idea. It's a dumb protocol, and it works. It works at enforcing a fixed supply cap. And when you think about what is money, why do we need it? It's about retaining value across time. It's about moving value across space.
Yep.
Bitcoin's positioned to do both of those well. So if you are playing out some future scenario of an AGI, they're probably going to pick the hardest money that can still function in a future environment if they're accruing value. So that's a check in the Bitcoin camp. And it's also, I guess at another level too, like you can play any future scenario you want, but at the end of the day, each one of us is a human being. We can't know the future. All we're doing is trying to best position ourselves for the future. And as I look at the landscape, yeah, I can throw stones at Bitcoin and say, who knows what money is going to look like in 30 years. But as far as I can tell, with these two eyes and this brain, this is the best choice at the current moment. So there's no better option.
Right.
And that's where I'm going to stack my hard-earned capital.
It's also important to remember a couple basic things about how Bitcoin works. The cryptography is not at risk. Like AI cannot just magically break cryptography, not without some giant leap in computer science, well beyond anything more in the realm of quantum computing. I mean, once we get there, things have to change. But barring that, everything is safe. Your keys are safe. Your Bitcoin is safe. Number two is, just because these things exist doesn't mean that they can necessarily mine Bitcoin or something, or there's still proof of work, which means that the electricity has to be consumed. The ASICs need to do what they do. AI has no way to disintermediate that, at least not from any way I understand, just to give it that, because maybe there is some way, I have no idea. But from my understanding of it, there is no way for that to happen. So Bitcoin is solid in any attack vector that I am aware of. I'll put it that way.
A way I could repackage that is, in an AI future, virtually everything digital is going to be forgeable. And Bitcoin is the best tool we currently have to make sure that something digital can't be forged. And for that reason, I think it's probably going to retain and accrue an enormous amount of value. But I think we need to be looking at this. We need to be looking at all technologies with humility because of how quickly they're going to be changing. So keep your eyes wide open, because I think in the rest of our lifetimes, things are going to be speeding up in a way that is going to make buttholes pucker.
Yes. Yep. Buttholes will pucker.
Buttholes will pucker.
I can't think of a better way to put a cap on this for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know it can be a little bit dense. I've read most of everything on his Substack. It is a great resource for understanding this. So highly recommend you guys check out his Substack if you're interested in understanding some of the basics and even some more intermediate stuff about how artificial intelligence and machine learning works.
Yeah, we barely hit the surface. Like, it's almost comical that we try to have an AI conversation in 50 minutes, because it's like having a Bitcoin conversation in 50 minutes. Picture
Yeah,
going on somewhere and trying to explain Bitcoin in 50 minutes. Jon Stokes was sitting at the two of us, looking at the two of us clowns, thinking,
yeah,
how the fuck am I going to manage getting this out in 50 minutes? But he was gracious. We got to some important topics. But I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking just the very, very tip of the iceberg. There's so much underneath the water.
yeah. But like anything, it's a good introductory, hopefully, and hopefully it helps people kind of make their way in the world with things changing as quickly as they are. And like you said, if you're manipulating images or text in your job, you better get on using ChatGPT to help you do it better, faster, stronger until it completely replaces you, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. All right, Yeshua.
You good?
See you on the flip side, brother.
See you later.